I like to write and draw with mechanical pencils and wanted to make an elaborate pencil box for them and came up with the idea to have a fitted lid with a few loops on top for easy access. I started this design by printing the wet molds in 1/4" MDF with my Glowforge laser printer and assembled the raised and line parts first because the molded parts need to be bone dry before using, which takes several hours. Then I used the same laser machine to cut the remaining pattern in acrylic for cutout templates and glue-up jigs. Molded leather like the sunken tray pockets are 3/8 inch wide by 3 inch long by 1/4 inch deep, and the base is raised another 1/4 inch. So the 4-ounce leather I used molded incredibly well without cracking. If there were any imperfections in the leather, it would have torn, so if you are going to make complicated multi-level wet molds, you should only use the highest quality leather and inspect it closely for any nicks or scratches. The smaller remnants of leather or the pieces too small to use for something else are perfect for lining raised parts like the area around the pockets of the molded tray, in the center of the gussets, and the foot to give support to the thinly stretched leather. As the leather parts are glued and stitched into place, a finishing hammer helps to flatten the edges, and it is inevitable when gluing to have a little spill out, so a glue eraser helps a little bit. Acrylic templates can be clamped on top of trim pieces to create a better bond, like around the edges of this wide hole opening, so the part can be trimmed flush along the entire edge. And hard objects like dowels work great to apply even pressure around a curve. I like to use less toxic glue, which sets very quickly, so having a strategy to hold the parts in place before glue is added is a good idea. When stitching through several layers of vegetable tan saddle leather, it is very important not to rush your movements with your awl because it is easy to cut through the top or into another stitching hole, especially if you are stitching through 3/8 inch molded and glued leather as shown here. Make sure your awl is sharp so you do not have to apply much pressure, and concentrate on where the tip will punch through so you can have your needle ready to replace the retracting awl, which makes it easier to find the hole. Then pull the thread tight to avoid the thread snagging your needle on the next hole. A trick I learned and always do, especially if I'm stitching several layers, is to check and make sure the thread is free before pulling it through the hole. The needle will move in the opposite direction if it is snagged. Saddle leather is very firm, and when cut or sanded flush, it can have sharp edges, so for a nicer finish, a sharp edger will remove it. Then to make the surface smooth, use a slicking agent and appropriate slicking tool. Burnishing hardens the surface, which makes it easier when you apply a finish like edge paint. The loops for the pencils are 2-ounce saddle leather on the inside too, which makes the loops very durable. The edges are sewn together across the area the pencil will cross, so the edges need to be skived to create a sunken seam to protect the thread. After the saddle leather is glued and stitch marked, it is still stiff, so to make it easier to stitch, I stretch the leather around a small dowel the same shape of my pencils, and then stitch the loops into place one at a time. I also stitched a lined tray below the loops to stop the pencils, which is also a good place to put a compass or extra pencils. Then the back lining is filled and the edges are finished before stitching the top and the bottom of the lid together. To make a braided edge with 3/16 inch lace, I made the pattern with 3/16 inch lacing holes, 3/16 inch from the edge at the center, and spaced 3/8 of an inch from the lacing hole centers. Braiding is for decoration, not strength, so I added a 1-inch strip of 4-ounce saddle leather along the edge to add a little strength, but mainly for the line shape to make the braided edges more like handles. I like to finish the edges before braiding and add a little dye inside the holes with a very small sponge, and then burnish the holes because the tops of the holes will show through. Black and saddle tan colored kangaroo lace is used here, and to estimate the amount of lace needed is 7 times the distance. Kangaroo lace is very strong for its thickness, about 10 times more than regular saddle leather, so threaded brass needles can be screwed onto a small area of lace and hold tight, which makes lacing easier, but the 2-prong needles work good too. And it is always a good idea to add some conditioner to the holes and lace to avoid cracking. Then after all the edges are finished, applying some leather conditioner inside and out will make the leather soft and supple, and I will probably do this a couple times a year. This pencil box will make a great addition to my workshop, and I look forward to watching it droop and patina over time.